Sincere Jaden. Sincere Jaden.
Because that brother kept poking around, and I thought, damn, this Kunta Kinte stuff is hard work. How badly do I want to know where I'm from in Africa? But I really wanted to know. I'd wanted to know since I was 9 years old, so, let's go for it. So finally, see, at the time, you had to extract a lot of DNA in order to run the test. Now, you just swab your cheek or spit in a test tube, depending on the company that you use. We could talk about that a little bit later. So it's very easy and it's very painless. So I waited and I waited and I waited. Rick Kittles went back to Washington. I waited for the result. And I didn't hear from him. So finally, I called him. And you know how people do. He picked up the phone after I called him about 1 million times. He goes, "Oh, man, I was just about to return your phone call." I said, "Rick, what's up, man? Where am I from in Africa? Where are my people? I want to jump on a plane and go. I thought I'd buy some land, get a fine little African sister, to hook up." I was single at the time, don't get me wrong. I'm still single. Well, so he said, "Well, we had to run, your results were anomalous, and we had to run them many times. But we finally have figured out where you're from. You are descended on your mother's side from the Nubian people." Now, all African Americans, not all African Americans, but many African Americans want to be descended from one or two ethnic groups. Either the Zulu, because the Chaka Zulu, and the Zulu kicked the English in the behind in the Boer Wars, right? Until they finally were overcome. But you want to be Zulu, or you want to be Nubian. Who were the Nubians? The Nubians were the black pharaohs, right? The Nubians are in the Bible. The 25th dynasty was the Nubian dynasty. In Egyptian art, they always hated the Nubians. Nubians are always represented as darker. They were warring kingdoms. And Nubia ran from what today's Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, up to the Aswan Dam, the second cataract in the Nile River. And so a Nubian, and all these people wanted to be Nubians, descended from the black pharaohs. So my friend Molefi Asante, the founder of Afrocentricity, we argued a lot in public, but we're very good friends privately. I joke, every time he attacks me, I get a raise at Harvard, so it's cool. So I attack him, we do what Malcolm and Martin couldn't do, set it up, then we go split the money and slap five and go to Sylvia's, have fried chicken. Believe me, that's a much better way to function than hating each other. So I called Molefi first thing. I said, "Molefi, I just got my results back. I am a Nubian. Where are you from?" "I am the true African prince." My friend Anthony Appiah, whose uncle was the Asantehene, the king of the Asante people. When Rick Kittle sent me a certificate announcing I was Nubian, Anthony Appiah looked at it and said, "What a ton of rubbish." Now, why would he say that? Well, there's a slight problem with being either Zulu or Nubian if you're African American. So I looked at Anthony and I said, "You're just jealous. Because I am a Nubian prince." I didn't care. I had it framed. I put it up in my living room so everybody could see that I was from royalty. So I didn't think about it. I thought maybe it was strange. Maybe it was on a trade route. There were great Muslim trade routes. Today, this is important for the students. In my time, we were taught that the Africans were these benighted people, and they were too stupid to build a boat or to be curious about the world and cross the Sahara Desert. It was rubbish. Africans were just as curious as anybody else. The Sahara Desert was a highway. It wasn't a barrier. So I thought, well, and there were great trade routes. So I thought maybe my Nubian descendant had come over and ended up being tricked by some white man and ended up in Maryland or Virginia or something. So that was cool. And if I needed an interpretation, believe me, I could have produced one. So, and by the way, the Zulu thing, when Oprah was finally in the first series, and we gave her a DNA test, basically the next day she went to South Africa to announce that she was opening what became the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy. She was in an auditorium like 75,000 people or something, and she announced that she just had the test and that she was Zulu. So it broke on CNN. I was sitting in my living room minding my own business and said, "Oprah Winfrey's a Zulu." So I called Rick Kittles, and I said, "Rick, did you tell Oprah she was a Zulu?" He goes, "No, man, she made that up herself." It's a true story. It's a true story. I would lie to make you laugh, but I'm telling you a true story. So I said, Rick, are you in your lab? He said, yeah. I said, is anybody there? He said, no. I said, when the results come in, make her Zulu, man. You know? I said, you back there making it up anyway. Don't nobody believe you could take some spit and figure out a tribe? What are you, crazy?
The father of all men is 340,000 years old. Albert Perry carried a secret in his DNA, a Y chromosome so distinctive that it reveals new information about the origin of our species. It shows that the last common male ancestor down the paternal line of our species is over twice as old as we thought. Perry, recently deceased, was an African American who lived in South Carolina. A few years ago, one of his female relatives submitted a sample of his DNA to a company called Family Tree DNA for genealogical analysis. Geneticists can use such samples to work out how we are related to one another. Hundreds of thousands of people have now had their DNA tested. The data from these tests had shown that all men gained their Y chromosome from a common male ancestor. This genetic Adam lived between 60,000 and 140,000 years ago. All men except Perry, that is. When Family Tree DNA's technicians tried to place Perry on the Y chromosome family tree, they just couldn't. His Y chromosome was like no other so far analyzed. The discovery and analysis of an extremely rare African American Y chromosome pushes back the time of the most recent common ancestor for the Y chromosome lineage tree to 338,000 years ago. This time predates the age of the oldest known anatomically modern human fossils. University of Arizona geneticists have discovered the oldest known genetic branch of the human Y chromosome, the hereditary factor determining male sex. The new divergent lineage, which was found in an individual who submitted his DNA to Family Tree DNA, a company specializing in DNA analysis to trace family roots, branched from the Y chromosome tree before the first appearance of anatomically modern humans in the fossil record. The results are published in the American Journal of Human Genetics. Our analysis indicates this lineage diverged from previously known Y chromosomes about 338,000 ago, a time when anatomically modern humans had not yet evolved, said Michael Hammer, an associate professor in the University of Arizona's Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology, and a research scientist at the UAS Arizona Research Labs. This pushes back the time the last common Y chromosome ancestor lived by almost 70%. Unlike the other human chromosomes, the majority of the Y chromosome does not exchange genetic material with other chromosomes, which makes it simpler to trace ancestral relationships among contemporary lineages. If two Y chromosomes carry the same mutation, it is because they share a common paternal ancestor at some point in the past. The more mutations that differ between two Y chromosomes, the farther back in time the common ancestor lived. Originally, a DNA sample obtained from an African American living in South Carolina was submitted to the National Geographic Genographic Project. When none of the genetic markers used to assign lineages to known Y chromosome groupings were found, the DNA sample was sent to Family Tree DNA for sequencing. Fernando Mendez, a postdoctoral researcher in Hammer's lab, led the effort to analyze the DNA sequence, which included more than 240,000 base pairs of the Y chromosome. Hammer said, "The most striking feature of this research is that a consumer genetic testing company identified a lineage that didn't fit anywhere on the existing Y chromosome tree, even though the tree had been constructed based on perhaps 500,000 individuals or more. Nobody expected to find anything like this." About 300,000 years ago, the time the Neanderthals are believed to have split from the ancestral human lineage. It was not until more than 100,000 years later that anatomically modern humans appear in the fossil record. They differ from the more archaic forms by a more lightly built skeleton, a smaller face tucked under a high forehead, the absence of a cranial ridge and smaller chins. Hammer said the newly discovered Y chromosome variation is extremely rare. Hammer cautions against popular concepts of mitochondrial Eve or Y chromosome Adam that suggest all of humankind descended from exactly one pair of humans that lived at a certain point in human evolution. There has been too much emphasis on this in the past, he said. It is a misconception that the genealogy of a single genetic region reflects population divergence. Instead, Our results suggest that there are pockets of genetically isolated communities that together preserve a great deal of human diversity. Still, Hammer said, it is likely that other divergent lineages will be found, whether in Africa or among African Americans in the US, and that some of these may further increase the age of the Y chromosome tree. A lot of hype with people trying to trace their Y chromosome to different tribes, but this individual from South Carolina can say he did it.